Hi there everyone and welcome to Summer School OT. This video is going to be a rip and glue art activity. This specific video is going to be for those students who still need a little bit more help with their grasp, who are still learning to use classroom tools like glue and markers appropriately. I'm going to be doing another video that's a little bit more advanced for the children who are working on that pincer grasp, working on specific line sequences. So think about your child and what they're working on now, and if they still need help with their grasp and a little bit of help to complete an art activity as directed, rather than they might like to crumple the paper, they might not be too interested. If they need a little bit more help, this video is going to be for them. So I've got two things. I've got a sunshine and then also some grass and some flower stems, and I'm going to show you how I would work with your child to complete a rip and glue art activity. So I've got yellow paper for my sunshine, and what I would do is I would have your child place their hands with help as needed on the paper. Once they've got their hands on the paper, I like to give them a little bit of extra feedback by kind of shaking the paper, and I always use a consistent cue so that the child develops a habit of, well, they don't develop a habit, but they have a better understanding of what it is that I'm asking them to do with the activity. So I might say, 1 hand, 2 hands, ready, set, rip. And then I'll show them the first time, because more than likely 1 hand, 2 hands, ready, set, rip isn't something you do on a daily basis at home. But after you do hand over hand, 1 hand, 2 hands, ready, set, rip a couple of times, then they'll get in that little routine. They'll have a better understanding of what the task is. Paper is tiny, hard to grasp. If your child needs help with grasp, feel free to put your hand over their hand every single time so that they have a nice firm grasp on that paper. Another tip, for whatever reason, getting the paper started is much harder than ripping once it's already started. So if you give it a little rip to the top of the paper, put their hands on the sides, then any little bit of movement they give you can more easily tear the paper. When they have their hands on the paper, you give them a little ready, set, pause. After they practice a couple of times, pause. You can still help them hold the paper so they don't drop it, but wait and see. Do their arms, do their hands move in an attempt to rip the paper? Paper is awesome because it's got that kind of crumply texture to it. It's also got a lot of auditory feedback. Kids, for whatever reason, just love the sound of ripping and tearing. So we're gonna 1 hand, 2 hands, ready, set, rip. And then once you've got an adequate amount of paper, you can decide whether you would like to apply the glue to the paper yourself. I really like glue bottles a little bit more than I like glue sticks for preschoolers and for kids who are still learning how to use their art supplies, work on their grasp. I don't have a glue bottle with me right now, but if you do, that's great too, because it continues to work on that 2 hands together concept. You can say 1 hand, 2 hands, squeeze, and then there's that kind of squishy feedback from the glue bottle that's great for working on strengthening that grasp. So I myself am going to just apply the glue, and you could apply your glue as the parent, or you could have your child help, whatever works best. But then you really want to practice putting the paper, the little paper, onto the big paper. So again, help with grasp as needed, but let your child do the majority of the work with their arm. Go ahead and let's see if they don't have any help at all with positioning, will they put the paper where it belongs? So the first time you might say, hand over hand so they understand the task. Let's put it on, and then after you hand over hand for a couple of trials, give them a piece of paper and ask them to put it on. They might not be able to put it on by themselves, that's perfectly fine, but we always want to give them that chance to show us what is it that you know, what is it that you've understood, and then what can you try to do by yourself. If they're not able to put it on by themselves, remember that it's sometimes really helpful to give them a cue at their elbow. So rather than holding hand over hand and then just guiding their hand to the paper, give them a cue at their elbow. At this point, I wish I would have had my little dummy with me. You'll have one hand on their elbow and then one hand helping them grasp. So then they can help guide to the paper. And then once they have placed their little pieces onto the paper, I really like to do a tap, 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 because that does not even require the grasping abilities. That's just working on, can I control where my arm and hand are going, and doing a little repetitive motion to tap, tap, tap that paper onto the glue to help it stay a little bit better. This is a relatively quick project to do depending on how big your area is, how big your pieces of paper are. Of course, if you tear them smaller, then you're going to have to glue more. But the more kids practice this activity, the stronger that grip is going to get, the more awareness they're going to have with both of their hands working together, the more familiar they're going to be with using paper to create art, using the different art tools such as glue. So I would recommend, if you have time and are able, to go ahead and do one rip and glue art project per day. So one day you might do the sunshine, the next day you might have your little flower stems, tear up different colors of paper and pat, pat, pat them on to make different colors of flowers. Ripping and gluing is really a versatile thing, because anything that you can think of that you would color in, you can instead rip and glue the pieces. So you all, of course, have my contact information. If you need any further help or guidance with this activity, feel free to get a hold of me. Also, I would recommend, I should have said this at the beginning, before you do your seated tabletop art activity, go ahead and start off with one of those whole body activities that I've shown in my other videos. So it might be supported sitting, it might be laying in prone, bearing weight through your arms, or a tactile bin activity, just something that's going to help wake your child's body up, get those hands and those arms ready to work. So go ahead and do an awareness activity first, and then sit down and try a ripping and gluing art activity. Thanks, everyone.